test out this microphone. Testing, testing. I'm not hearing anything. Let's see. Do I have everything plugged in correctly? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. It's now. Please let me know if you can hear what I'm saying. As soon as we get audio feedback from the viewers, we will begin this live stream. Once again, testing out the audio. Testing out the audio. I can hear myself, but don't know if you can hear me. You can hear me. Sweet. Awesome. Let's get going here. It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of Q&A with the coach live. And cord stuck in this chair somehow. What happened here? I'm so confused. One moment. 1 minute. Okay. Once again, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of Q&A with the coach live. I'm doing this with a webcam as opposed to my phone, so we got some differences in angles, etc. So let's see how this goes. We got Nick Johnson in the chat, Maddie's in the chat, Ixender is in the chat. The science of something or other is in the chat. Your full screen name is not showing for some reason. What is this? So let's discuss some questions. The first question comes from Nick Johnson's Martial Arts with Friends, who says, why did you decide to chase the black belt? I specifically decided not to chase belts. So I hold black belts in a number of different martial arts. And specifically because of that, I've decided it's not the thing I want to focus on, chasing belts. Belts don't fight for you. You shouldn't identify with being a belt. You might notice I don't tell people I'm a black belt. I'm a brown belt. I'm a white belt. I'm not a belt. I'm a human being. You are not a belt either, my friends. So please don't identify as being a belt. Identify, if you don't know, comes from the Latin idem, meaning the same, ficare, meaning to make the same, to make yourself the same as. That's what identify means. Do not make yourself the same as a belt. It's an inanimate object. We have a question from CJ Van de Bogart, who says, if there was another Ultimate Self-Defense Championship-like contest hosted by someone else and they invited you, would you join? Nope. Not interested. Phaser wants to know, is it true that expats and foreigners get special treatment? I assume you mean foreigners living in China. Do we get special treatment? If by special treatment you mean people stopping and staring at you and saying, look, it's a foreigner, and then whipping out their camera and taking pictures of you, sure, so special. We have a question from SBV, who says, are ropes for gloves effective? Somebody saw the skit playing before the live stream with Akuma from Street Fighter trying to teach Jordan Chow the secrets of the dark Satsui no Hado. And of course, Akuma wears ropes wrapped around his hands instead of gloves. Is that effective to use as a glove? Kind of, actually, yeah. There are a few different martial arts, combat sports, etc., like what do they call it in Thai? Card chook, something like that, where you wrap your hands with ropes instead of gloves. Weaponizes the hand, turns your hand into a weapon. Yeah. We have a super chat. Awesome. Thank you very much. Killer Bead01. I have my first amateur boxing fight soon. Any advice on handling pre-fight anxiety? Oh, okay. I thought for a minute you were going to say any advice on an amateur boxing match, in which case I was going to say, yeah, hit the other guy a lot more than he hits you. Amateur boxing matches. We'll get to the anxiety in just a minute, but I do want to give you a quick tip on amateur boxing. And this is something a lot of amateur boxers fall short of in their first match, which is they're not busy enough. Amateur boxing is different than professional boxing in the sense that you are being judged by how many punches you land, and that sounds kind of obvious, right? Except it's not necessarily the quality of the punches, but it's your busyness, your aggression, how many times you touch that other guy, even if it's not a heavy punch. Just stay busy, keep going. Okay, so your first amateur boxing match. Any advice on handling pre-fight anxiety? Okay. That pre-fight anxiety is creating an imaginary monster in your mind. It's creating a fighter you're going to fight who isn't even real. So what do we do about that? Besides calm down and breathe. Do you know how to box, my friend? At the amateur level, first-time amateur boxer level, sure. But, dude, trust your training. Trust your training, keep your guard up, and stay busy, and you're going to be fine. So, how many days do you have before this boxing match? Because this is going to factor in a lot. Is it tomorrow? Is it in a week? Is it in a month? Is it 6 months from now? How far out is your amateur boxing match? Killer Beat, can you tell me? Again, there's a bit of a delay between the comments and what I say on the screen, so 3 months from now. Okay, that's interesting. So for 3 months, you're going to have this hanging over your head, and that can be exhausting. Like, it's one thing if you're like, oh, I've got to fight tomorrow, I've got to fight in an hour. We can deal with that because we only have to deal with that imaginary monster for a little time. But for 3 months, this can be a little overwhelming. So yeah, I understand it. You're running through every scenario in your mind right now. Imagine, like, what if the other guy hits me? What if I die? What if I win? What if I do this? What if I zig when I should have zagged, etc. So I understand why in the fight game we set up fights months in advance, but at the same time, we're also doing ourselves a disservice mentally by forcing ourselves into this mentally exhausting game of hurry up and wait. So if you are feeling anxiety in these 3 months, just remember, a smart guy once said, get out there and train. That solves a lot of problems. If you're feeling anxious, take that anxiety and turn it into motivation to train. If you're feeling that anxiety while you're lying down in bed about to fall asleep, and then you're like, oh, the fight's coming up. This happened to me a lot when I was fighting. And I'd have fights scheduled months or weeks in advance, and I would just be lying down in bed thinking, oh man, I can't sleep now. I'm thinking about the fight, man. Don't forget to breathe. This is advice I give you all the time about fighting, actually being in a ring or in a cage. A lot of people forget to breathe, but we also forget to breathe in our everyday lives. So if you're feeling the anxiety, take some deep breaths, man. Good luck. I think you're going to do awesome. And yeah, man, even if you don't do awesome in this fight, even if you lose, it's all good because you're going to learn and you're going to come back better every single time. Thanks for the question. We have another super chat from Big James Radio who says, where is Red Chucks? Oh man, we got a whole string of super chats. Awesome. Well, let's address the Red Chucks question. Red Chucks, I believe he lives in Northern California. So what happened to Red Chucks? So he No, I don't wanna speak to what I don't know, but he's doing okay right now. I had a chat with him fairly recently. I spoke about this on the last live stream, actually. He is focusing on his training right now, and he just had a boxing match. I'm going to commentate on it on this channel, but he told me he wants to focus on his training right now as opposed to social media. So you might notice he's not loading to YouTube or Instagram at this moment, but he is training, he is fighting, and he's doing a lot better right now than in some previous months. So yeah. Um, so look forward to that video. Red Chuck's boxing in a heavyweight exhibition. It's a pretty cool match. A lot of things we can learn from it. And yeah, we have a super chat from Maddie. Thank you very much. Who says, "Hello, Mr. Ramsey. I love your channel. Thank you very much. I know some traditional martial arts meditation. I was wondering if you incorporate meditation into martial arts, and if so, what kind do you do? Thank you, Professor." Oh, okay. Um, Meditation is something I do independently of martial arts, not in conjunction to it. I mean, meditation is, in the broadest sense, thinking deeply about something. In some Eastern traditions, meditation is thought of as clearing your mind and not thinking about anything. But yeah, so the way I define meditation is just thinking deeply about anything, reflecting deeply about anything. Do I do that? Yes, daily, constantly. Is It is important, I think, especially when you have a busy life, or even if you don't feel that busy. In the modern world, we tend to plug ourselves in to everything. We plug ourselves into a screen. We plug ourselves into social media. We plug ourselves into television. We plug ourselves into video games. We have all of this input, all this stuff beaming into our eyes constantly, beaming into our brains, all this information. And that can be good or that can be bad, depending on what kind of information we're absorbing. But it is important to stop and meditate upon what we have learned from time to time. Did you guys ever play Elder Scrolls before Skyrim? Yeah, we're making video game analogies here. But when you level up in the old Elder Scrolls games before Skyrim anyway, when you got enough advancements in skills to level up, you would get a message on the screen saying, "You should rest and meditate upon what you have learned." And you wouldn't level up until you actually went to sleep and rested and meditated upon what you have learned, as opposed to a lot of other games. You get the experience points and boom, you're instantly stronger. So why do I bring this up as far as Elder Scrolls? It's a true principle. We can spend a lot of time in the gym. We can watch a video giving us information, but we're not really going to learn anything about it. We can even have a real life experience, but we won't learn anything about it until we rest and meditate upon what we have learned. So Elder Scrolls actually teaches us something very important right there. Um, so how do I incorporate meditation into martial arts? Generally, I tend to learn the most about martial arts right before I fall asleep. So I come home from my evening classes, I get in bed, and I lie there reflecting on the sparring sessions, reflecting on the lessons I gave, reflecting on the questions my students gave me, and so on. And I have these aha moments where I have a moment to just stop and chill and process it at a deeper level. So yeah, it's very important to do some form of that. All right, we've got some more super chats. Greg D says, "Hey coach, question. When doing forms, kata, etc., I notice that most people forget to act like it's a fight. How do you break that plus make forms real?" I think first, before acting like forms are a fight, you have to understand what the forms are actually for. See, if you look at kata from karate, for example, in modern karate, every single movement is punctuated as if it were a punch or a kick. whereas only a small percentage of the movements in those forms are actually punches or kicks. A lot of it is hand fighting, grappling, grabbing, pushing, framing, etc. Stuff that in reality would not be performed with the percussive action of a punch or a kick. But we see that. So, how many of the movements from your forms, from your kata, from your taolu, do you actually understand? How many of them do you have practical bunkai for? Not just theoretical bunkai, but stuff you can and do actually do in a fight that you learned from your forms. If the answer is none of it, or maybe the punch or the kick, then you simply won't be able to perform your forms as if they were a fight because you don't actually know the forms, or the meaning of the forms is what I should say. You know the movements, you don't know the meaning. If we don't know the meaning, we cannot perform it as if it were a fight. And so when people are doing forms and acting like it's a fight, for the most part, they're doing guesswork. I think forms in the modern world, anyway, the way most people do them is more like a living encyclopedia than a fight, an attempt to remember a specific movement pattern. And there is some value in that because you got nerds like me who like to study and dissect this stuff and pour over videos of people doing forms and try to figure out what is the combative application of this movement. But imagine for a minute you're performing this move as if it were a fight, but you don't know how to use it, so you're doing it wrong. Maybe you're doing a grappling maneuver as if it were a punch, thinking I'm doing this with fighting energy. And ultimately, you're just reinforcing a bad movement pattern because you're doing it with the wrong energy. I hope that helps. We have a super chat from Baron of Gray Matter who says, Mid Lake Pavilion Tea House, Shanghai, have some tea on me, coach. Um, well, I appreciate the super chat. Thank you. I don't drink tea for religious reasons, though. Um, and this shocks my Chinese friends because practically everybody in China drinks tea. It's as common as drinking water in China. And when you tell people I don't drink tea for religious reasons, they're like, what's going on? But I appreciate the super chat. Okay, Eichsender says, I have an interview with the chief soon for being a jail guard, and I'm stressed. Advice. Also, I'll be moving very close to Dewey, Washington, USA for there's a Dewey, Washington? Interesting. Ooh, okay. Now, this sounds like a question from my friend Bob. My friend Bob is a retired prison guard. He was a prison guard for quite a long time, and he would have so many stories for you. And I think being a prison guard, now you're applying to be a jail guard. Imagine that's quite a bit different than being a guard at a federal penitentiary, but probably a lot of the same things happening regardless. But that job changed that dude. Changed him, man. Being around inmates constantly changes a man. I'll say that from outside observation. So, good luck with the interview. And you're stressed about it, and maybe rightfully so, because you're applying for a potentially stressful job. You want the job. It's a interviews suck, don't they? You have to essentially go and beg for a job without appearing to beg. It's 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 one of the crappiest situations a man has to face in life, doing a job interview where we do this formal thing that seems like it's normal, and it's one of the least normal things a man can possibly do is it's like fancy begging, man. It's I hate job interviews. I've had so many I'm probably like the worst person in the world to ask for advice about job interviews, to be honest. I have had hundreds of failed job interviews, like hundreds, like so many. It's not even funny, man. It's just straight up sad how many failed job interviews I've had. I remember I had so many bad job interviews. I got to the point where I kind of stopped stressing out about it because it was like, well, if if this goes like the last 300 job interviews I've had, then there is absolutely nothing to stress out about here because nothing I say matters. So have fun with it, I guess. We have a super chat from Ruin's Lair. In a currency I don't even recognize. What currency is that? I've never seen that. It's like a W with 2 slashes through it. Interesting. Well, thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate that. Says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how BS is Aikido? Daito Ryu, Jujitsu, etc. Apparently its founder was an occult. So BS from the beginning, question mark. So I spoke about this topic in a recent video titled something like Aikido won't work until, where I'm at the gym, I'm with some of my students, and we're troubleshooting Aikido and Daito Ryu Aiki Jujitsu techniques, wrist locks and shoulder manipulation and some takedowns and so on from those martial arts. Is it garbage? As I addressed in that video, the techniques are good techniques. A wrist lock is a wrist lock. A shoulder lock is a shoulder lock. A throw is a throw, and unbalance is an unbalance. The problem with the way Aikido is generally taught in Aikido dojos is they remove the elements of what a fight actually is. They'll teach the technique without the context. And the context is imperative if we want to learn how to use the technique. So let's say you learn a wrist lock, kotagaishi, something like that. And that's it. You were just taught where to hold the hand, how to apply the pressure, where to move your feet, etc. You're taught the theory, and then you're asked, okay, go spar now for the first time in your life. You are not going to hit that technique. You won't. If you take, say, an MMA fighter, an experienced MMA fighter who's been in a bunch of fights, he trains every day, he spars all the time, he's familiar with combat, hand-to-hand combat, with how human bodies move, how they give you pressure, etc. And then you teach him the same move, the same body mechanics, same technique, etc. He's going to be able to wrist lock people with a much higher percentage than the other guy who simply learns the technique out of context. Why? Because the fighter has the context of fighting. So the techniques are fine. The context, not so much. Is Aikido a cult? Maybe. A lot of martial arts turn into cults. I'm sure there are plenty of Aikido schools out there that have become cults or cult-like. There are martial arts schools of all types that have become cults or cult-like. We see that constantly. We see that all the time. Can you learn from a cult? Can a martial arts cult still teach you martial arts? Sure. Along with the other baggage that comes with it. We have a super chat from Maddie again. Thank you very much. Second one. Who says, you keep talking about your knee. I am an acupuncturist, and since you live in the land of acupuncture, I was wondering if you've tried it. I fix knees all day, every day. I have not tried acupuncture for my knee. As far as I understand, the purpose of acupuncture, and you being an acupuncturist, know more about this than I do. But as far as I understand, the purpose of it is to deal with pain by manipulating the nerves. As far as my knee goes, we have a torn ligament, and it's not a pain issue; it's a mobility issue because there is a mechanical dysfunction. So I'm not sure what acupuncture would actually do to help fix that, but um, I do know a lot of people who swear up and down about acupuncture here in China, and acupuncture for some people seems to fix everything. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe it's psychological. I don't know. I don't know, but I have not tried it. But I appreciate the super chat and the comment. Thank you very much. Nargle says, "How to start a morning in 6 a.m. better than with a Ramsey at 6 a.m." Awesome. Getting up early for this live stream. Phaser wants to know if I plan on living in China for the rest of my life. I cannot retire in China unless they change the laws here. So, no, I plan on living here until I decide to not live here, but I cannot retire in China. So we have a follow-up comment from Maddie who says it increases capillary circulation to the tissues to rebuild them. It would probably help your knee. Okay. So if anything that does increase blood circulation does increase the rate of healing, this is true. I that is interesting. If that is true of acupuncture, I will look into that. Thanks for the suggestion. Appreciate it. Let's see here. We have a question from Marshall who says, I've recently incorporated weightlifting with my pairs of 10 and 15-pound dumbbells, doing 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps. What number of sets and reps should I do for endurance, strength, and explosiveness? Okay. Well, for endurance, do more than you did last time. That's pretty straightforward. So we're dealing with 10 to 15 pounds. I don't know how strong you are, how big you are, etc. So numbers are pretty relative as far as weightlifting. Some people would look at that and say, "Oh, those are small weights," but I don't know. Maybe for you, starting out, those might be big weights. So, but again, with endurance, you just want to do more reps, right? So you can use the same weight and increase muscular endurance and start out doing 10 to 15 reps and work up to do 16 reps, 17, 18, 19, 20, 50, 100, etc., to increase your endurance over time. Okay. As far as strength goes, you've got to increase the load or increase the weight. Okay. And follow the principle of progressive overload, meaning when those 12 to 15 reps, 3 sets get easy, you're going to have to get some bigger weights. So maybe see if you can hold the 10 and the 15s in the same hand, and then you got 25s, or just get some bigger, heavier weights when that movement gets easy. As far as explosiveness goes, well, you can add some plyometrics, add some jumps, and so on. That's a plyometric jump is a phenomenal exercise. Um, so as far as explosiveness, that's kind of a synonym for power. In this sense, power is the capacity to perform work over time, meaning moving a weight faster. So how do you develop that? You move the weight faster, or you move the weight farther, or you move the weight higher. So you can hold on to those weights. If you're doing, say, a farmer walk, if you want to express power more, do a farmer walk upstairs, on an incline, up a hill. And suddenly you're doing more work with the same weight. See, there are a lot of ways to take a fairly small weight, like a 10 or a 15-pound dumbbell, and increase the difficulty of the exercise quite a bit by changing a few basic parameters. In other words, use more power by forcing yourself to do more work. Greg D says, Ramsey, in your philosophy, is it smart to avoid fighting? Does that make you cowardly or smart? Don't get into a fight that you're not getting paid for. That's my advice for you. So if some idiot out on the streets is trying to goad you into a fight and pushing you, calling you names, etc., and you have the chance to not fight him, why the heck would you fight him? Doesn't make sense. Is he going to pay you for that? Nope. No, he's not. Now, if you're a professional fighter and it's literally your job, and that's how you make money, and that's how you feed your family, that's how you pay the bills, fighting for fight promoters who are going to pay you for that violent action makes sense. The science of something or other says, would you say that martial arts, like Chinese martial arts, is represented on the internet, or are it mainly so-called masters? You mean like are Chinese martial arts fairly represented on the internet, or are we seeing basically like a bunch of bullshido for the most part, just the fake masters, not the real stuff? What's happening there? Okay, I think I understand the question. So almost every time I talk about Chinese martial arts on my YouTube channel, regardless of what I say, a bunch of people will chime in the comments and say, yeah, Kung Fu sucks. Chinese martial arts are fake. And this tells me a lot of people have never experienced real Chinese martial arts. They've seen shallow imitations of Chinese martial arts. Or they've just seen people who are just very bad at it. And it is very interesting how a narrative can start on the internet. And I think this started when Shu Xiaodong was going around beating up fake Tai Chi masters, and those videos spread to YouTube. A lot of YouTube commentators started sharing those, and they got millions of views, and that created this general narrative of Chinese martial arts suck, Chinese people don't know how to fight, etc. And it's just simply not true. There are fake martial artists and subpar, crappy martial artists in every style. Okay? Like, you could do the same thing with karate, for example. A lot of you like karate, a lot of you train in karate, a lot of you hold black belts in karate. And you know for a fact there are a lot of bad representatives of karate out there. Like, you know that. You've seen them. You probably trained with some of these guys. You might have been some of those guys at some point in your life. Now, what would happen if a series of viral videos started going out where, let's say, some karate guys misrepresenting the art of karate or just sucking at it got beaten up by, oh, I don't know, some random people who didn't even train, and the general message and the general consensus from everybody on the internet was, well, karate sucks, karate's fake, karate isn't real. You'd probably take some issue with that and say, no, you don't understand. These guys are not a representative of the whole thing. They're just bad karate guys. How is that hard to understand? But that's what's happened with Chinese martial arts in the West on YouTube. So I've seen the fake stuff. I've experienced the real stuff. There are many, many different styles of Chinese martial arts. There are like 400 different styles of Chinese martial arts. So Kung Fu is not a martial art. Kung Fu means great skill acquired over long periods of time. If you don't have great skill, you don't have Kung Fu. You can be a martial artist and not have attained Kung Fu. You can practice traditional Chinese martial arts and have no clue about Kung Fu because Kung Fu is great skill. If you lack that, you are not a Kung Fu master. SBV wants to know if I'm familiar with the martial art of Pak Mei. Nope, I am not. SBV wants to know if I would spar with Shu Xiaodong. Dude, I would spar with anybody who wants to spar. Sparring's fun, man. Have I ever talked to Ranton? No, I have not. I have not talked to Ranton. I left a comment on one of his videos about the Karate Kid. He made a really interesting video about the Karate Kid. I haven't seen a lot of Ranton's videos, but I saw one he made recently about the Karate Kid, and I thought it had a pretty good message, and I left a comment, and he responded back, and he was like, little positive engagement there. That's as much as I have talked to Ranton. HMAR says, "Who decides when you reach Kung Fu?" It's not a rank or a belt somebody gives you, man. It's not something anybody decides. It's just a fact. It's just like it's either good or it's not. It's hot or it's cold. It's not for you to decide what reality is. Is bicep strength important in martial arts? Strength in all of your muscles is important in martial arts. Is it important to have a disproportionate strength in your biceps as opposed to the rest of your body? No. It doesn't make sense to have a disproportionate balance of strength in your body. Just be strong everywhere, dude. You know what the most important single lift for martial arts is? The deadlift, because it makes you strong everywhere, especially in your posture. I love training people who deadlift as opposed to people who don't because they're easier to coach. They're a lot easier to coach. And it's not just the fact that they're stronger than people who don't deadlift, it's the fact that they're easier to give cues to. So there's this older gentleman named Paul that I train, and he deadlifts. He can deadlift like 200 kilos easy for a guy in his 50s, great strength. And we were working some grappling techniques the other day, and we're dealing with a single leg situation. And I tell him, "Oh, all right, so flex your leg like you're doing a deadlift." And he does it, and boom, that's the technique right there. If you try to explain that to someone who doesn't deadlift and say, flex your leg like you're doing a deadlift, they'll have no clue what you're talking about. They can't follow that cue. So, all right, we got some super chats. Sparhawk says, "Hey, Big Rams." Love the nickname. No question at this time, but I just want to say I love your work and I hope I can visit your gym for a lesson or two when I'm in China later this year. Awesome. Sparhawk is coming to China. Yes, please come visit. That would be rad. Thanks so much for the super chat. DTV says, "Is weightlifting bad for combat sports?" No, weightlifting is good for every sport. It is great for every sport. Strength training is super important. Athletes who do strength training are athletes. People who don't do strength training are not athletes. I know there's a lot of myths, and have been for 100 years or more, that lifting weights was bad for combat sports. Where's Harry the Greek guy? He's gonna pee his pants over what I'm about to say here. But in the modern era, this myth that lifting weights makes you slow and muscle bound because they're looking at bodybuilders who don't specify their bodies for combat sports, and specifically they just do the slow movement of lifting a weight repeatedly, which does not develop the athletic specificity for combat sports. Where do the Greeks fit into this? Go back 1,000 years or more to ancient Greece. Go back a couple thousand years to the ancient Greek Olympics, and look at what the combat sports athletes for boxing, pancration, and wrestling were doing back then. They were lifting weights, and we have archaeological examples of the weights they were lifting. They were generally made out of stone. And look at the statues. Unless they were embellishing the statues, presumably they had some models posing for these things. Those dudes were built, man. Those martial artists, those ancient Greek martial artists who lifted these stone weights, which were heavy, by the way, those dudes got strong. Strength makes you better at fighting. It's funny, everybody is puzzled over this, but nobody's puzzled over the fact that, when combat sports athletes cheat and take steroids, like, oh, he's a cheater, he took steroids, and yet we still perpetuate this myth, oh, strength doesn't matter in martial arts. Unless the guy's taking steroids to get stronger, then it matters a whole great deal. Well, which is it? Is strength important or not? Of course it's important. Being stronger is objectively better than being weaker, especially in an athletic endeavor as extensive as fighting. Greg D says, is Tai Chi worth it for low energy exercise? Well, there are a lot of different things that are being called Tai Chi right now. And the thing most people tend to think about is doing slow motion forms and doing Zhan Zhuang, the standing breathing postures, which are technically a different thing than Tai Chi, but a lot of people conflate the two. Is it worth it? I mean, it's not bad for you, moving around, breathing, standing, doing standing postures, standing meditation. I mean, it's fine, it's good. It's not bad for you. Is it worth it? This question concerns me, like, are you being charged for it? And if so, how much? Do you have like a Tai Chi teacher who says, give me $1,000 a month and I will teach you these life-saving movements? In that case, maybe not, man. If you are watching a YouTube video, like doing a follow-along form, flocking style, to just get up and get your blood moving and start breathing a little bit, great, of course. It's a free investment of time and energy. If you are training Tai Chi the way I trained with Master Wu back in Jiangsu province, it's definitely not low energy. It's sparring and tossing each other around on the ground, man. Phaser says, did I ever get to spar Jeff Chan in Australia? Yeah, we did a bit of stand-up sparring. You can watch it on Jeff's channel. Yeah, we did like 2 rounds of basically sanda sparring. So punches, kicks, and standing takedowns. I wanted to do an MMA round, but Jeff had done so many sparring sessions with the other guys. He was like, I'm tired, man. But yeah, if you want to watch that, it's up on Jeff's channel. We have a super chat from, how do you pronounce this? Jamed Granular, who says, when do you start to see diminishing returns as your weight increases for fighting, assuming that this weight is mostly muscle mass? Could someone who is 260 pounds beat someone who is 400 pounds by gassing them? Okay, so I assume you mean like a 400-pound muscle monster, like maybe one of these world's strongest men, like Eddie, what's his name? Eddie Hall or Thor Bjornsson, one of those giant muscle monsters. Could like a smaller end heavyweight beat these guys by gassing them out? I mean, look, anything can happen in a fight. If you look at, say, Emmanuel Yarborough, a sumo, morbidly obese sumo, 600 plus pounds, and he had a fight with an open weight fight against a small Japanese fighter, an average sized Japanese fighter, a guy who's like 150 pounds. And that fight was the little guy running circles around the big dude. And the big dude eventually glommed onto the little guy, took him down, and the little guy squirmed until he managed to get a leg lock on the bottom. So anything could happen in a fight. So what would happen if we had, oh, I don't know, who's a good heavyweight in the UFC? Pick a name, any of the heavyweights in the UFC right now, and put them against Thor Bjornsson or Eddie Hall, these dudes who have an excess of 100 pounds of muscle as far as an advantage on these UFC heavyweights. Who wins? Well, I kind of stacked the deck technique-wise because the UFC heavyweights are obviously better fighters than Eddie or Thor. We have a lot more experience in that regard. So is the assumption everybody is the same technically? So let's say we have fighter A who's 260 pounds. Maybe he's a jiu-jitsu black belt, and he's a good striker, he's a good MMA fighter, and we have a 400-pound guy who's exactly the same. Technically, he's just bigger. Can the smaller guy gas out the big guy? Again, there are a lot of variables missing, but let's address a different part of this question because it is an interesting question. When do we start to see diminishing returns as your weight increases for fighting? Probably when you have more mass on your frame than your frame is built for. There's a better answer. There is a better answer. For example, if you're a teeny tiny dude, let's say you're 5'3". Sorry for all the 5'3" guys who I've now just called teeny tiny, but let's say you're 5'3", okay? Not a big dude. And you want to pack on as much muscle as you can. And so you start eating everything and taking all the steroids and all the performance enhancing drugs to get a super ordinate amount of muscle mass on your body, and you bulk up to like 300 pounds. 300 pounds of muscle on a 5'3" frame is probably way past the point of diminishing returns. Okay. If you have a guy who's, on the other hand, 7 feet tall, 7.5 feet tall, 300 pounds on him is going to look skinny. So the point of diminishing returns comes once again when there's more muscle, more mass, not just muscle, but mass on your body than your frame is built for, than your skeleton is built for. This is true with obesity as well, right? If a 400-pound guy has 20 pounds of body fat on him, he's lean. If a small child has 20 pounds of body fat on them, they're obese. So the size of your skeleton matters a great deal. Okay, what other questions do we have? Marshall wants to know what my opinion is on hitting tires, just in case you're unable to afford a heavy bag and decided to make a makeshift one out of tires. I've done that. I've used tire heavy bags. I've hit tires. Tires give you some interesting feedback. Now, you probably want to wear some gloves or those tires can shred your hands up and they don't feel as nice to kick as a heavy bag. But if you got boxing gloves on, a tire heavy bag is kind of awesome. I like the feedback it gives. Gives like the way your hands kind of bounce off of it and you got to hit it with a little more pop. It's a nice way of developing power. So I like the tire heavy bag. Again, I've used it. I had one at my old gym. I'm thinking about making another one. Um, Another way you can use tires to make a nice heavy bag. Our friend Sergio from the what is it, Practical Combat Martial Arts channel. He has a video where he's got half a tire. He sawed the thing in half, and this is really cool. I'd like to make one for myself. Sawed a tire in half and then mounted it on a wall, and he uses it as an uppercut bag, which is awesome. I mean, I want to get one of those. So you get all the feedback, all that bounce, so you develop the pop in your punches from that you get from a hanging tire bag, but now you can use it for uppercuts and hooks and coming from the side and underneath. It's kind of awesome. I'm kind of surprised more people don't do that. So yes, the tire heavy bag gets my stamp of approval. The Science of Something wants to know what type of Chinese martial arts have I tried out. I know you've practiced Baguazhang, Sanda, Tai Chi, but have you practiced some others? In addition to what you have mentioned, Chinese folk wrestling, Shuaijiao. That's about it. Now, I have a bunch of friends who do Wing Chun, Yong Chun, and I've practiced with them. I've done some forms and some training with them, but not to a great extent. So I wouldn't call myself a Wing Chun practitioner, even though I'm familiar with the movements. The Surya Kung Fu is in the house. How you doing, friend? Have I thought about becoming an actor in China? Our friend here wants to see me in a fight scene with Jet Li, says Marty. I'm a terrible actor. Have I thought about becoming an actor at all? When I was a kid, I thought being an actor would be cool because, movie stars make a lot of money. It looks like they're having fun up on the stage, but it's shockingly hard to be a good actor. Yeah, Nils and Jordan, they do Wing Chun. So yeah, a number of the guys you've seen on my channel are also Wing Chun practitioners. A lot of my students in my MMA classes over the years have come from a lot of different backgrounds, including Wing Chun. Alexis Rodriguez says, "Hey coach, how overrated are genetics in how athletic someone is? I feel like unless you literally have bad genetics like cerebral palsy, genetics are a cop-out for hard work that someone has put in." A lot of people certainly use genetics as an excuse to suck, when the reality is they simply aren't doing the work. So, are there good genetics? Are there bad genetics? Well, obviously, our genetics determine what we look like, how our body is formed, how tall we are, how big our skeleton is, etc., etc. And yeah, we're not all created physically equal. We're simply not. And that's something we can't help. But yeah, you bring up a great point. Unless you're born with a specific genetic disease or something like that, you really don't have anything to complain about genetically. If you're a healthy human being with all your fingers and toes and arms and legs, if you are if you're a person who can move the way nature intended, you have a lot to be grateful for. And there are a lot of people out there to whom life has dealt a bad hand who went out there and did awesome things. Do you remember Antonio Rodrigo Noguera? When he was a kid, he got run over by a truck. Just absolutely mauled by a truck to the point where they had to surgically remove part of his liver. And he spent a lot of his childhood just in awful poor health at death's door. And the last thing anybody expected of him was to become a mixed martial arts champion, one of the most prolific fighting athletes the world had ever seen to that point in time. So life finds a way, man. There are people who are not genetically gifted. In fact, I would say, as far as martial arts is concerned, and this is where martial arts takes a big turn from a lot of other sports. In a lot of other sports, we see the more genetically gifted people competing. In football, we have the bigger guys. In basketball, we have the taller guys. Right? These are genetic gifts, if you will. In fighting, however, we have the little engines that could. We have the guys that life told no, and they said yes anyway. We have a super chat from Naruto Uzumaki who says, "Hey coach, just out of curiosity, people leaves the church because they were not happy with Brigham Young's past, like owning slaves and a bunch of polygamy. What's your stance on that?" I don't know if Brigham Young owned slaves. He was an anti-abolitionist, but I don't know if he actually owned slaves. He was a polygamist. If you're not familiar with, we're having a Mormon question here. All right, we're back into the Mormon question segment of Q&A with the coach. But so let's see if we understand the question. So some people, he says, leave the church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because they're not happy with Brigham Young, who was the second president of the church, like back in the 1800s, because they find out he had plural wives, and they're like, "Oh, that's weird. I'm leaving this." Okay. All right. What is my stance on people who leave the church because they find out that Brigham Young did some stuff that they're not happy about? I mean, that's their prerogative to leave the church if they don't like the way Brigham Young lived his life 170 years ago. But I don't know. I don't really understand the question, to be honest. Are you asking me, like, how do I feel about Brigham Young practicing polygamy and or being a anti-abolitionist person? You should probably watch my video. It's called, what is it called? I have a video where I discuss Brigham Young and his anti-abolitionist stance on this channel. Let me look it up and give you a link to it. And I think this will answer your question a lot better than anything else here. Okay, here, I found it. We send you the link. Okay, Naruto, I'm putting the link in the super chat to this video I want you to take a look at. There you go. That will answer your question. Maddie brings up a salient point who says, I'm not Mormon, but I don't understand why they get so much hate for polygamy in the past when, like, literally every dude in the Bible was a polygamist. That's a great point. Oh, man. What always shocks me is often, not always, but often people who are like anti-polygamy tend to be pro-polyamory. I'm like, okay, how is it that you're perfectly fine with one dude having multiple romantic partners, but you're not okay with that situation if he's actually in a committed marriage relationship with those people? There's a disconnect there to me. It's kind of odd. Anyway, before this turns into a polygamy apologetics show, we have a super chat from Jamed Granular who says, my friend got an acting gig for an advertisement for a Chinese AI company in New York City. People told him that Chinese businessmen will hire white dudes to hang out at meetings just to make them seem more legit. Give it a shot. I have seen that. I have seen that. The token white guy is a real thing in like the modeling industry in China. So a lot of times they'll I have a lot of friends and actually a lot of students who are professional models. Guys from like my friend Maxim, he's from Belarus, handsome dude. He gets a lot of modeling gigs to be the token white guy in Chinese advertisements because you have a handsome foreign guy from the Chinese perspective. It adds a touch of class or something, some sort of je ne sais quoi to your advertisement that makes people think, oh, this is foreign and exotic and oh, must be worth the hyperinflated price tag. So that is a thing that happens in China. And similar things probably happen in your country too, because the foreign and the exotic are often sold or used in advertising to make things seem more appealing that otherwise wouldn't be. So should your friend give it a shot? I mean, if it pays well, why not? If it pays the bills, why not? Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate that. Oh, sweet. JH is coming to Shanghai. JH says, our 7-year-old daughter is doing Taekwondo for about a year and a half now. Cool, cool. And last time we were in China, I took her to train at a Taekwondo school. Okay, awesome. I hope I can bring her to your gym when we go to Shanghai. Awesome. Let me know when you're in town. Man. Gaitan Marceline says, how many ways do you have to finish off a straight footlock, coach? Ooh, several. I've got a few videos about straight footlocks, but if I made one specifically on that topic, how many ways to finish a straight footlock? I'm trying to count them in my head. Let's see here. I think about 7 so far. 8, 9, at least 9, maybe more. At least 9 ways to finish a straight footlock that I regularly use. If I thought about it a little bit more, I could probably come up with some less higher percentage ways, but at least 9 high percentage ways to finish a straight footlock. It's one of my favorite techniques. SBV says, I can't find a straight footlock video on your technique playlist. Probably because my straight footlock techniques are integrated into other strategy style videos. For example, setting up submissions off of a takedown. You'll find several footlocks there. Guard passing videos, guard passing into footlocks. That's another thing that comes up a lot. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Now, maybe I'll make a dedicated video about finishing footlocks. We'll see. The Fox says, did it help your wrestling when you lost part of your vision? Shockingly, yes, it did. Yeah. Since my last professional fight where I had my skull broken and partially blinded, I have become a substantially better wrestler. So how does it help your vision to not be able to see? Or how did not that came out wrong. How does it help your grappling, your wrestling if you can't see? Well, for the simple matter that if we're trying to see everything in grappling, we're focusing on the wrong thing. If we are focusing on instead what we feel, every other sense except for sight, we're doing the right thing. So changing our perception changes our priorities often. Dhruva says, what do you recommend for karate guys to learn how to box? Do it. Due to it being an awkward transition. Yes, it is an awkward transition. But just spend a little bit of time boxing every day. If you do a round of karate sparring, do an equal number of rounds of boxing sparring until it doesn't feel awkward anymore. That's what I recommend. The Science Hub says, is Shuaijiao a good term for Chinese wrestling? Like I remember you named sometimes the Shuaijiao in China can also mean judo or Western wrestling. What term can you use? Well, if you're speaking English and you want to say Chinese folk wrestling, you can either say Chinese folk wrestling or Shuaijiao because you're saying wrestling in Chinese. But yeah, do you know how to say Western wrestling in Chinese? You say Shuaijiao. How to say freestyle wrestling in Chinese? Shuaijiao. I mean, it's the general term for wrestling. If you want to specifically in Chinese delineate you are speaking about Chinese wrestling, you might want to say Zhongguo Shuaijiao, Chinese wrestling. We have a super chat from Royal Fitness who says, you remind me of Andrew Tate. Let me ask you this. Is there anything besides the bald head that reminds you of Andrew Tate? Like, I genuinely want to know if there's anything about my character, the way I act, the things I speak about, my personality. Is there anything besides the baldness that reminds you of Andrew Tate? The beard. Okay, there we go. We're exactly the same. The Syria Kung Fu wants to know, were we allowed to give lethal blows to the bad guys in the self-defense championship? No, we were specifically instructed, and you can watch this in the rules meeting on Jeff Phillips' channel, or you can see the clips on my channel. We were specifically instructed to go light and just tap the other guy, and to, if we had the opportunity to hurt them, to just give them a little tap to make them know, yeah, we could have got you right there. That's specifically in the instruction that we got as far as the sparring type of events. Man, I'm so sick of talking about the Ultimate Self-Defense Championship. I made my last video about that. I'm done with that section of my life. But I made those videos for you guys, man. I made those videos because you guys sent me so many requests. Can you finish making the series, reviewing it? And part of the reason I put off those last two for so long is because I got so much negative backlash from people, and people just saying the darndest things to me, people assuming that I was bitter and jaded because I didn't win the competition. "Oh, no, I didn't win. Win." And it's like, I am reviewing my experiences because you asked me what happened behind the scenes. I told you what happened behind the scenes. Please stop whining about it. Anyway, now back to Chinese wrestling. We have a question from Harry. Harry, the Greek guy, the god of speed. Now back to Chinese wrestling. I mean, are you serious? How can wrestling be called Chinese when it was invented in Greece? Excellent question, Harry. You need to come over here to China and set all these Chinese wrestlers straight and say, this is Greek. Ah! Let them know, man. Dhruva wants to know, are there any new martial arts styles to be created? We could say yes, and we could say no. Here's the argument for no. Bruce Lee gave a pretty good argument for no. He says there's no such thing as styles, and there definitely won't be new styles. Unless a man has 4 arms and 6 legs, we won't see a new style of fighting. So there's that kind of argument that everything under the sun has already happened, and we're just reimagining, as Harry would put it, what the Greeks already did. Boxing, wrestling, pankration, essentially, and just repackaging, what ancient people did. But are there new style? Can we invent a new style of fighting? I mean, we can package things differently. Here's the case for yes, we can have a new martial art. We can have a new delivery system of martial arts. And it's not necessarily new, but a more efficient delivery system for martial arts. So people have been training to fight forever, but have people been training to fight effectively in every situation? No, absolutely not. There, as we've discussed previously, there are bad martial arts gyms. There are people who've been training in martial arts their whole life, and they suck at martial arts. So what separates the good training from the bad training? Essentially, we have good delivery systems for the information. We have bad delivery systems for the information, and everything in between. So as a coach, instead of focusing on how do we invent the ultimate martial arts system, rather, how do we deliver the information in a more effective way? That's the question we really need to be focused on. Maddie says, I like your Master Wong and Friends suggestion in your video about the self-defense show. Man, if I was rich, if I had like, I don't know, Mr. Beast YouTube money, here's what I would do with that. I would get all those self-defense weirdos like Master Wong, the Dust guy, the Detroit Urban Survival Dale Brown dude. I get all these kind of goofy guys, and I'd put them in a room together, and oh man, I would have so much fun with that. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Speaking of Mr. Beast, YouTube has never once recommended a Mr. Beast video to me. I've never seen a Mr. Beast video. I've only heard of Mr. Beast from other YouTubers talking about him, because apparently he's very popular and has made a lot of money off of YouTube. But I have no idea who the guy is. So it's kind of shocking that this platform like YouTube, where the YouTube algorithm is based on pushing the most popular content to the most people, and the alleged most popular guy on YouTube is not being pushed to me. I guess my viewing history is not conducive with Mr. Beast videos or something. Probably for the best, says Sparhawk. Probably. All right, let's take a couple more questions. Are we running out of questions? I think we are. Have we answered all the questions? Have we accomplished the goal of Q&A with the coach? Have you been coached sufficiently? Oh, okay. Here's a question from Skinny Bruce Lee. I love that screen name. Skinny Bruce Lee says, Ramsey, how do I stop being a one-trick pony in wrestling? All I do is throw in my matches. Wait. Did I read this right? At first, I thought you said all you do is throw your matches. In that case, that's a terrible way to wrestle, and obviously a joke. But if you mean all you do is throw your opponents in your matches, um, okay. Is it working? That's the question. Is it working at high levels? How do you stop being a one-trick pony? Well, you learn something else and you develop other skill sets, obviously. If all you can do is throw your opponent, but you can't pin them, that's missing, like, the part of the wrestling game that allows you to win a wrestling match, being able to pin the guy. So focus on pinning your opponent. Work your groundwork, my friend. Claymore Steele says, "Hey, I saw your post about playing more Oblivion with your daughter. I was wondering if you guys have played Morrowind." Of course we have. Morrowind is the greatest Elder Scrolls game of them all. What kind of coach would I be if I didn't tell you that? Man, Morrowind is like Elder Scrolls the book. Skyrim is like Elder Scrolls the movie. The book is always better than the movie. Always. Morrowind really is like Elder Scrolls the book because there's so much reading involved. We got a super chat from Phaser who says, Ramsey, if you had to assemble a team of 5 YouTube martial artists to fight 5 aliens invading, other than yourself, who are you picking? Oh. Okay, what kind of aliens are we talking about? Are we talking about like sci-fi movie aliens from like the movie Aliens? Those things are tough, man. They're armored hides and they're acidy spit and they're babies that cling to your faces and oh man, those things are a nightmare. Are we talking about like Star Trek aliens where they're basically humans but they got funny ridges on their foreheads? And maybe they have some advanced technology like phasers or disruptor rays. Are we talking about War of the Worlds aliens, where they're these big old giant tripod squid creatures that will die if you infect them with the common cold, in which case I'd find out which martial arts YouTuber had a cold and then send him to cough on them all? Are they Klingons? Are they Star Wars aliens who can use the Force? I mean, there are so many variables we don't know about in this question, so I'm just going to make an assumption unless Phaser clarifies. Oh, regular humanoid-looking aliens that have similar fighting styles. Okay, now we're talking. So basically Star Trek aliens, regular humanoid aliens. Maybe they have some funny ridges on their foreheads. Which martial arts YouTubers are we sending to fight them? And they're similarly powered, meaning this is going to be an even matchup, meaning you're essentially saying, which martial arts YouTuber do I want to see in an evenly matched fight? I think evenly matched fights are the most compelling on paper, and in reality, they're either very exciting or very boring. Very boring in the cases where 2 guys stalemate each other, very exciting where we have 2 guys who are similarly matched on paper but have divergent skill sets, and so we see the epic game of rock, paper, scissors going on. But if they're invading and the stake of and the fate of the world is at stake, I'm choosing probably Jordan Pressinger from Jordan Teaches Jiu-Jitsu. That guy's just absolutely solid as far as fighting goes. His channel focuses mostly on jiu-jitsu, but the small amount of MMA content and his MMA fights that I have seen, the guy has a really solid understanding of fight logic, man. His fight IQ is up there. His ability to combine striking and grappling seamlessly is very, very good. And I wish he would do more of that on his channel. But again, it's a channel focused on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically, first and foremost, as opposed to mixed martial arts. But I think Jordan has a lot to offer in terms of fight knowledge. So yeah, he would be number one. Who else are we picking to fight the aliens? Do you remember that scene from Star Trek V, I think it was, where Kirk and Dr. McCoy get sent to a prison camp on some alien salt mines somewhere, and they are attacked by this giant alien, and then Captain Kirk kicks him presumably in the knees, and the guy falls down incapacitated, and then it is pointed out that Captain Kirk just kicked this alien in its genitals because that's where they keep their genitals, on the knee area. So we need to bring Master Wong into this equation because Master Wong, I believe, is going to be able to find the genitals of any alien species, no matter where they are located on the body, rip them off, stick them in his mouth, and then no more baby for you. Vote it streets. Who else are we bringing to defend the Earth? Oh man, out of martial arts YouTubers, man, who's good at fighting? Jeff Chan is always a solid pick, but the aliens might be huge. We don't know. Jeff Chan he's a good fighter, but he's on the small end. He is on the small end, but yeah, he's a good guy. He's competent. Let's bring him along. We got two others. Man, I'm blanking on it. Let's see. We're backing up on the super chats here. I need some names. Ah, ah. We need like a big solid tank character to absorb some damage and distract the others. Let's send Sensei Seth in for that, just because he's a pretty big dude. He's good at tanking damage and distracting others, and surprisingly agile, so he can move around while the other dudes take the aliens down and mollywump them. Oh, wait, is this one-on-one or team fighting? Team fighting, okay. So, ooh, so we need some generalship here, like somebody who is good at organizing the team, right? You know, as far as generalship, I'm going to throw Faraz Zahabi in there just because his team generalship is strong, and he is a competent fighter in his own right. So yeah, we're throwing Faraz in there. He'll be able to orchestrate the assault where Sensei Seth tanks the damage, Master Wong attacks the alien genitals on their knees. Let's see. Jordan does most of the heavy lifting, and we need one more. Who do we got? Any suggestions in the comments here? Spend it way too. I'm taking this question so seriously. Jake Mace. Let's throw Jake Mace in there. No. Dale Brown. Dale Brown is too OP. Steven strangles people. Chujitsu. Those are all great choices. Let's throw Chujitsu or Steven in the mix and hope for the best that they can save the planet from these 5 invading aliens. Sweet. All right, a few more super chats. JH sends in a super chat. Awesome, no question. Just showing some love there. I appreciate it very much. A super chat from Jamed Granular, who says, why do boxers and MMA fighters, etc., have different stances? Well, they're different sports with different objectives. The main reason you'll see different stances from MMA fighters and boxers is takedowns and leg kicks. Essentially, in boxing, you may not attack below the waist, below the belt. Nothing. No takedowns, no kicks, no low blows, no attacking the legs in any way, no shoulder to hip. In MMA, that's not the case. You can attack the body below the waist. You can kick the body below the waist. You can shoot for takedowns, etc. And so the stances have to change. They have to change to compensate for kicks. They have to change to do kicks and takedowns. The stances have to change to defend those attacks and so on. So you're going to have radically different stances in those two sports. I've got a few videos to that effect. So go give those a listen. I've got a video titled Stances! ! So I discussed that topic a little bit more in depth. Go check that one out. In fact, let me see if I can pull that one up for you. There we go. Let me send you a link. I'll drop that link in the chat for you. No. Here we go. So Jamed, there's my stances video. Go take a look at that. I'll explain a little bit more about why we use different stances in different combat sports. We have a super chat from Naruto who says, is religion faith-based or fact-based or both? There are many religions who practice what they do for a bunch of different reasons, but let's talk about what faith actually is. Faith is not blind belief. A lot of people think it is. Faith is not blind belief. Faith is acting based on how can I put this the most concisely? Has anybody ever taught you something like you go to a martial arts class and the coach teaches you something and you've seen this thing work, like he teaches you how to bob and weave, for example. You're going to a boxing class. He teaches you how to bob and weave. And in theory, you know this can work because you've seen fighters can do this. But you don't know if you can do it. And it's kind of a leap of faith to start moving your head in a way that feels counterintuitive and even potentially dangerous when the other guy is punching at you. And you start second guessing, well, if I do this, then what if he does that? So it's a leap of faith just to follow your coach and learn a new technique and try that new technique in sparring for the first time. And the first time, man, it takes people a long time. Most people take a long time before they even start moving their head in sparring, even though it's objectively the better thing to do. To move your head, a moving target is harder to hit than a still target. But it's an act of faith. Faith is belief in a true principle that promotes action. It is not a blind belief in something that doesn't exist. Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to look after the fatherless and the widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. That's from the book of James, chapter 2, in the Bible. Okay. James is delineating his religion, the religion of Jesus Christ, as an action-based faith. It's not just saying, I believe this thing. It's not just saying, it's not sitting on your laurels and calling yourself a good person. It's getting out there and doing the stuff that matters. And again, James illustrates that with a bunch of different examples. If you have a beggar out there on the streets begging for food, it's not enough to say, oh, be warmed and filled. You actually have to do something. If you want to do good, if you want to show your faith, show it through your works. That's the whole point of James chapter 2, the whole point of the book of James, what faith actually is. It is action based on a belief in a true principle. You want to do some good in the world? Okay, show your faith through your works. So that's in my opinion what any religion that is worth its salt will do. Show their faith through their works. By their works shall you know them, is something Jesus taught. So if a religion is not producing that, it's not a good one. Phaser sends in another super chat. I'm headed out, but God bless you and your family and stay safe out there. Hey, thank you. No question, just some kind words. I appreciate you being with us, my friend. All right, guys, that seems like a pretty good note to end on. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all the super chats. Thanks for all the questions, guys. Thank you for watching. Now, get out there and train. And let me see if I can find a way to end the super chat, because I'm using my webcam instead of my phone for this one. And I don't know where the off button is. Where's the off button, guys? Oh no, this live stream will go on forever. Where's the off button? Do I just exit out of this Let's see. It's here somewhere. Oh, it's the big red one in the big red box that says end stream. Got it. Out.